drum roll. Why am I the only one that drum rolls?
Because you control it.
I feel like it could be a joint drum roll, though, like once I start. And welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. April 12th, 2022. We're back. We were on hiatus yesterday. Are you going to tell that story? I
can't.
I won't step on it.
Do you know what legendary rock and roll band had two drummers?
No.
Like same time on stage.
Rush.
Drummers. No. They only have one. The Grateful Dead.
Did not know that.
Grateful Dead had two drummers.
I have more questions about that. We are going to talk about a local modern crime today. We read it. You and I started talking, and we were like, there's a lot of good questions to ask around this topic. So it's not even about necessarily that it's local or that it is who it is or what's happening. It's really just a deeper social conversation about modern crimes and how do we decide some of this stuff.
Yes.
We're also going to talk about Britney Spears' announcement. We've had different conversations about Britney Spears in the past. We're going to talk about her most recent one. And then there was a great story that kind of went under the radar yesterday about the Philadelphia Phillies third baseman. And I think it says a lot about like the psychology of fans, the psychology of a city. Like it's just a really interesting
conversation. I think society too. I think it's a neat story.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So we're going to talk about Alec. I believe it's Baum in Philly. So we're going to get to all of that. Before we do, the most important question of every day, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Well, I'm not pregnant, so that's a start.
Good start.
No, I'm good. Like it's supposed to be warm today, isn't it? Like we are.
Oh yeah.
Around the corner.
Oh, we're hitting 70s.
I think I'm debuting. I think I got to double check this. Okay. I'm making my season debut, not my lifetime debut, as Little League umpire extraordinaire tonight.
Oh.
Or Little League umpire mediocre. We'll see how it goes.
In the field, behind the mound,
but behind the plate.
Behind the plate.
Yeah, okay. But I do have a good command of the strike zone.
Okay.
I actually like umpiring. I've talked to the players probably more than most people do.
Sure.
But yeah, I kind of get a kick out of it. So
yeah. That's my biggest thing. Like if you're reffing, if you are a security person, if you are somebody that is in authority over somebody that doesn't really get to decide that you're an authority, just be willing to talk to people. Like just be willing to have conversations. That's my number one thing.
I probably shouldn't say this before I get to the game tonight because it could make for tension, but there is so much angst in youth sports between the coaches and the kids.
Okay.
And because 99.9% of the coaches in youth sports, their kid is on the field.
Sure.
And there's an added pressure you feel. I felt it when I was a coach, that you feel like everyone's looking at you. And when your kid is playing in a position of kind of prestige in baseball, which is like pitcher, catcher, shortstop, first base, and your kid screws up, there's this automatic inkling, like everyone's looking and saying, why is your kid there? My kid could have missed that throw. My kid could have. And when you're umping, you can talk to the catcher all the time. Some of them won't talk back to you because they're still young.
Sure.
Like you get to the junior level, 13 and 14, you just have a running conversation.
Yeah.
But at 11 and 12, sometimes they're like, I'm not supposed to talk to you, umpire, whatever. But someone will talk back to you very much. And you'll get dad yelling at the kid because the kid didn't block a ball or whatever, because they see guys on TV. And it is hard for a 75-pound kid to block a fastball that's that. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Sure.
And so I often have running conversations where I'm like, listen, you're doing fine. We all have a dad. Like, there's no way in hell you could have blocked that pitch.
Can you imagine if an officer did that to like your daughter when she got a ticket, if she was like crying and the police was just like, listen, you're doing fine. Your dad's not going to be that upset at you. Like, imagine if authority figures did that, like through life cycles.
It's just like I don't know if I could even count on one hand, but how many times I've said to the little kid, listen, Yadier Molina couldn't have blocked that pitch. Right. So what your dad's screaming at, I don't have any idea, but you're doing just fine.
You'll appreciate this from Adam real quick. I came on just in time to hear you say the Grateful Dead had two drummers. So did the Doobie Brothers and even Leonard Skinner for a while.
Huh. No, that I did not know. What I never saw, I saw the Grateful Dead live. Adam is a local drumming legend. He teaches at Uptown. Sometimes I don't know if he still does. I probably shouldn't throw that out, but he has taught a lot. He was He was the best drummer in our band. He was a year ahead of me in high school, but he's been in lots of bands.
Awesome.
Flu Shots. He's still in the Flu Shots, I think.
Okay.
They're a local bar band, and he's in another one too. But
Nice.
yeah, and it's odd because it's the only time I got to see it.
Sure.
But they're playing two different parts.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not like a drum corps where they're playing the same stuff.
Right. So it's not for emphasis or depth. It's the actual.
It's musical.
The music itself is more than one drummer. I don't want to say could handle, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a buddy who played a little guitar, right in my first job out of college, and he told me he's like for a lot of the world, the Grateful Dead is like the ultimate stoner band.
Okay.
But he's like musically, they were way more talented than the normal person would think.
Than what they get credit for.
Yes. And then when I saw and I asked, like, why they have two drummers. They play, yeah, watch them.
It's like Styx and Big Daddy. He says Styx only get a bad rap because most music critics are assholes. You don't remember that from Big Daddy? So
no, I have.
That's our one curse word for the day.
I have for the day. I don't curse. I don't curse ever.
That's not true.
Not on the air.
That's not true. Let's dive into this. Again, we can't express enough. This is more so for the social talking points, modern crime kind of, because this is a crime that could not have taken place 12 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's not so much, obviously it's a local story. You can read it on North Central PA. But we are not so much interested in the local aspect of it as much as we are in the dynamics surrounding age and crime and telephones and cell phones and how do we navigate this world and what does it all mean? Is that fair to say?
Yes, because we, our kids are living in a world that we didn't live in.
Yes.
And it is, so when you look to your parents for guidance, like the big adjustments coming through. I remember like the VCR was a big deal when I was a kid and our parents didn't have it. And, every of my generation, all of our parents grew up learning to drive a car that was a stick shift.
Okay.
Now, lots of my generation learned to drive a car that was automatic. Now this generation can't drive a stick because they just don't. But those were the big, like, touch tone phones were a big deal. Like but the modern innovations that our kids have is just, it's so foreign to us. Mm-hmm. And we can't relate. We can't relate to what it was like to be able to take pictures constantly and send them to take videos and send them and all this stuff. So anyway.
So this is, again, if you want the full detailed story, go to NorthcentralPa.com. You can read it. Here's the basis of the story that we need for our conversation today. There was a 16-year-old girl who was charged after police say she sent sexually explicit videos and pictures to a 19-year-old man. So just that one sentence, you and I agreed, is so flipped or so opposite of what we are used to reading when you see that headline.
Yes.
So again, a 16-year-old girl charged sent sexually explicit video pictures to a 19-year-old man. So both still teenagers, according to the affidavit.
Correct.
Essentially what happened was the man, who's 19 years old, contacted state police around 2:00 on a Friday after receiving Snapchat videos and pictures from the underage girl. The trooper investigated the sources of the images and discovered they come directly from the girl, according to a press release in the affidavit. So up to this point, essentially what had happened was receive the pictures, called the state police investigated into it, and basically deemed there was no middleman in it. These came directly from the 16-year-old. Okay, so you're with me so far?
Yes.
The last kind of piece to this, so according to this, it's illegal to distribute sexually explicit material to anyone under the age of 18, which I think the majority of people know, even if the sender is the minor in the images. So even if you are sending images of yourself, that's according to state law. A person who intentionally views or possesses the same material could be charged with child pornography. And again, that is under state law as well. So as of right now, the teenage girl is being charged with disseminating intimate images in district court. Okay. So That is the basis of the story.
That's the ground. Yes. Now we go from here.
You and I have a lot of different ways. Is there one that you want to dive into first?
Well, my first one is I can't believe that this ended up involving the police and an actual charge. And as you know, the things we don't know how many were sent to him. We don't know. Like we
don't know if these were the first.
Yes.
We don't know if these were.
If this was a one-time thing, and this guy was like, "Oh, I'm going to tell the police," and then the police, I mean, what would force a 19-year-old to go to the police? And as you said, maybe he was afraid that he would be looked at as in possession of child pornography, which is as the article said.
So this is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I to me, this is very much the pendulum swinging back from what we've decided to do. And some of it's great. And I think so we have swung so far one way, and that if someone says something, you have to look into it, you have to, and I'm not saying I'm for or against it, right? I think that's a much deeper conversation. Right. But to me, some of this is the pendulum coming back the other way, because the things that can be held against this 19-year-old man, what other choice does he have other than to reach out and notify the cops?
Well, and that's a fair question. Without being a lawyer or a policeman, my thought would be anything that she sends him, if he just deletes it, then he's okay, because he didn't ask for it. Mm-hmm. And anybody can text you anything, even if it's a wrong number. You can't be held liable for anything that just gets sent to you.
The weird part, though, is there's not a verbal trail to this, meaning we are assuming he did not. There's not a virtual or paper trail saying he asked for this. We also don't know what he or she said verbally to each other.
Correct.
So that's another very twisted, weird way, because if you're only going off of what is virtually sent, very few times is that the full conversation that was had.
Correct. I'm with you on that. I mean, to be purely speculative, which is probably unfair, but to be purely speculative, my guess is this was more than once. He asked her to stop. It got to be annoying. Maybe he's in a relationship with someone else and it was causing issues, and he thought that this is the only way he could get it to stop. That would be my guess. But I'm imagining how many girls or guys who are under the age of 18 who are like, wow, I could be charged with sending child pornography if I send any or explicit, whatever the charge was. Right. Because this ain't the only 16-year-old that's ever done it.
See, that's something I wouldn't have known, that sending pictures of yourself could be seen or viewed as sending.
I would think nobody would know that. I would have never guessed that. I would not have
initially put that together.
No.
If he or she is 20, it's obviously not child pornography, but could it still be seen as pornography? That would be the next question that I would have. Is this being viewed as pornography because it's child pornography because he or she is below the age of 18?
So that's a good question. If you've got two 17-year-olds who are seniors in high school who haven't turned 18 yet, is that child pornography? If one 17-year-old sends a picture to another 17-year-old, or was this a video or whatever it was, whatever it is.
I mean, either way, it was intimate images is what they're
intimate images. That's fair. I don't know. I mean, it is. I would have never guessed that a 16-year-old sending an image of themselves, they could be charged with child pornography when it was an image of themselves. I would have never guessed that. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but
It makes sense that it's pornography.
From a legal aspect, I guess it would make sense. But I would have never thought that.
It's a great question. I guess I just don't know the legal definition of
Yeah.
pornography and what is because that is to me, that's the kicker is would we still, because they're under the age of 18, it's very easy to say, well, that's clearly child pornography. Like it's not like there's a
Right,
naked person
right.
under the age of 18. That's so obvious. But we also, I mean, like if you go on Instagram right now, I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are making a living, I would argue, showing adult pornography on a public Instagram feed. But I don't think anybody looks at it as pornography.
Yeah, you're right. It gets back to the definition of what's pornography. It's a crazy, and those are the aspects. One is the legal aspect, which just surprised me because, again, as we said, we're not lawyers, we're not policemen. But just this, where does it get to this point that, like, I don't understand why the guy thought that the best solution was to go to the police.
I can totally relate to that, though. I'm not saying it's what I would do. I'm not saying it's what is the solution, but like I can totally, if a 19-year-old guy or girl wanted to say, I was afraid what would happen if it was ever traced back to me. And the only way for me to 100% know that this was never going to come back as if this was something that I did, or this was something I asked for, or something that I didn't report, the only thing you can do is notify. It's the only way.
I guess.
It's the only way when you lay your head down on a pillow at night that you can, without a doubt, know, like, this is not coming back to haunt me, even if I didn't ask for it, even if I didn't request it.
I mean, that's a fair.
And that's why
that
I
is
said
fair.
To me, this is a lot of like it's not that I'm against the pendulum swinging where we've come in some of this stuff from 5-10 years ago, but some of it is the pendulum swinging back. Like when you say, like, why would a 19-year-old male feel like they need to go that far and make that call? I think when you look at the advances we've made and the things we've done recently, when it comes to like teenagers and different things, I have no doubt that he was like, I have to, like, this is my only real solution.
Maybe. See, I would have thought the other way, that he thought it was the only way he could get it to stop. But you may be right. And maybe it was the first time, maybe it was the only time. I don't know. I just don't understand why charging the 16-year-old girl makes the world a better place. That's what I don't get.
When you word it that way, when you take the legal aspect out of it and you just word it like that, I totally agree with you. I don't know if it's making the world a better place by doing this to her, but the way that the laws are stipulated and how afraid teenagers are of some of this stuff, I'm not surprised at all that someone would make that call.
I get it, but there has to be some discretion. When a police officer pulls you over for going 72, they can give you a warning.
Sure.
They don't have to write you up.
Sure.
So there is discretion there somewhere with someone charging. And
I guess so this would no, because that's a fair point, because I think we had kind of talked about this before. I said to you, the difference is the consequences on the other side of it. And so maybe if someone's going 72, like, could they get in an accident? Could something bad happen? Sure. But there's a difference between getting off with a warning because you were going 72 and getting off with a warning if you were supposed to get a DUI, because the consequences could be, okay.
Good point.
And so the point that I'm making with this is, like, the consequences for this guy, if for whatever reason it came back and, like, someone confiscated his phone and they looked and they were like, hey, 6 months ago you had this child pornography on your phone. You didn't report it. You didn't whatever. And, like, he's like, oh, I just thought if I deleted it, things would be fine.
And I get that.
Like, the fallout for him is way worse.
But it's not, at this point, I'm not looking at him. I'm looking at her. So, like, the reason that there are child pornography laws in general is to protect the minor.
Sure.
So in this aspect,
the minor
did it themselves. So they weren't being taken advantage of. They weren't being exploited. they did it voluntarily.
Mhm.
So I understand from a psychological aspect where people would say as a minor, the person isn't fully mature enough to understand consequences and embarrassment and things down the road that could come of this. And I get all that.
Right.
But if you're trying to protect the kid from future embarrassment or, any aspect like that, I don't understand how a criminal charge helps that.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
It also brings, and I don't even know if this is I don't even know if we have time for this rabbit hole, but it also brings up like the one community who said, like, what is an 18-year-old? Like, what is the difference between a 19 and an 18-year-old? What is the difference between an 18 and a 17-year-old? Like, how do we, in a world where these people are going to have these devices? Because originally, like for a 14, there was a time. I mean, when I was in high school, 16-year-olds did not have cell phones. A cell phone was something.
Me neither. When I was in high school, we didn't have neither.
Okay, but here's the point I'm making. A cell phone was something you got when you essentially went away to college. It was kind
now
of like
you get it when you go away to middle school.
Right. And so the point I'm making is some of our definitions, like some of the things that we decided for an 18-year-old, we made those choices when like 16-year-olds didn't have cellular devices with the world on them. Like we made some of these choices when an 18-year-old, it was very clear we understood what an 18-year-old knew and had the ability to do, what they had the capability of looking up or sending, and that has shifted so much now that like I'm not saying that the laws should be shifted one way or the other. I'm saying like people really need to ask themselves, what is the difference between a 19 and 18, a 17, a 16? Because when you look at like who has a phone and who doesn't, I would argue they all have phones. Like they all have the ability to look up whatever it is they want to look up and see whatever it is they want to see.
Yeah.
And I know there's still like, there are helicopter parents out there. And by the way, I don't even say helicopter parent as like a negative concept.
You should.
No, I probably should. But like, I understand there are parents who know what's going on their kids' phones and they're like looking after and all that stuff. But it's still the capability. It's still like they can do these things that they just couldn't do when some of this stuff was decided.
Well, but to think that, so if you send your kid to school and your kid is whatever grade and your kid is one of the 10% of, seventh graders who don't have an iPhone or a smartphone or whatever, that if you think that your kid can't go to school and borrow his friend's phone and look at all the other phones of the other kids who the phones aren't being monitored, it's just so. That's another aspect that I hadn't even thought of till you just brought it up. In this 16-year-old girl's world, maybe like nudity on devices is common. It's just part of their world.
I would argue that the average, maybe I'm going out, maybe I'm on a limb a little bit, but I would argue that the average 15, 16-year-old kid, boy and girl, every time they open up a phone and they get on social media, they are seeing, maybe it's not pornography, but they are seeing risque photo or video.
Risque is a good word.
Every single time they get on.
Everyone?
You don't think so?
Because you say that when you say that I have a 15-year-old son. Every time.
What I would argue, it would be curious to have Jimmy come in and just, because this is what I would say. I would bet you that if
be honest, nobody's watching.
I would guess that if Jimmy went to his Instagram and he went to the search, like the Explore, not just his feed, but he went to the Explore. I bet you 1 out of every 4 would be some type of like bikini, risque, who knows?
No, I'm with you.
Dancing flirtatiously, whatever it might be. And same thing with his TikTok, like for you page. Like a lot of it would be. So I'm kind of like backing up your point of to a 15-year-old guy or girl, how far does that remove them from the normalcy of like a nude photo? I'll tell you this, a lot closer than when I was.
Well, yes. And we look back like, and I think of like when I was 15, if we had but in their world, since it's just part of their world, Is it even as big of a deal? It would have been a huge deal to us to
Right.
have like one day we're going to put this device in your pocket and you can look up, you can watch anything you want to watch.
Sure.
And to them, it's like that's their life. So what's the big deal? I can watch it tomorrow. I can watch it right now. I'm going to play Fortnite again.
I've had this conversation with family. I'm way closer when I think about what I was like when I was 17. And I think about like what was available to me as far as like what you could learn, what you could see, what you could find, what you could dig up. 17-year-old me was significantly closer to 13-year-old today than I would have been to 17-year-old today. Just because it's not even close. So again, I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. I'm not here to say like whether or not she should be charged. I just think this is another example where like I think for a lot of people 18 is 18, and I'm just here to say that like I'm sure there are some laws that it should go up, it should go down, it should be shifted, there needs to be a conversation about like what is an adult and what is a minor, and like is it as black and white as we have cleared it out to be? Because I don't know what an 18-year-old is.
No, I'm
like,
with you. The world has changed and the laws
just shifted.
Yes,
and listen, and I'm talking further than just the conversation we just had. Like when we talk about just like drinking ages and like even getting your license at 16 and like all these different things, a lot of them probably need to be significantly dove into to really talk about like because I don't know what a 16 or an 18-year-old is right now compared to when I was a 16 or an 18-year-old.
Well, and the problem too is the people that are making laws have no idea.
Probably not.
And because I know one of the issues with this was this, I don't even know what the term is, but they're starting to make laws in states about when a couple when they share pictures with each other and then they break up, and then what the person does with the pictures, and there were no laws to protect.
Yeah. Why would there be?
Because
laws?
there was never any laws. And we've seen the battles that Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson had with their stolen video,
right? And
who has the rights to it, and can they? Because people are just showing it online. You could buy it online, and then they're like, "Well, you don't have the rights to it." And so there's where there's parts of the internet that's still the wild, wild west.
Absolutely.
And yes, and the people making the laws are just so far. They're the furthest people away from the curve.
Sure.
As not even being ahead of the curve, but so far behind the curve. So anyway, it is.
No, the last thing that I would say about it is one of the fascinating parts about this discussion is it is something that like this crime could not have occurred 12 years ago. Like it's just it's completely removed from what the foundation of law thought it would handle a decade and a half ago.
And I think that when you take the 60-year-olds who sit there in their suits and their and make these laws and whatever, and they have no idea that a 19-year-old, they would have to sit down with a 19-year-old in cargo shorts and a t-shirt and a hat on at 45 degrees to explain to them how this world works, because the 60-year-old who is supposed to write the laws for our land has no idea. But this 60-year-old will never listen to the 19-year-old because that's not how it works.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
Not the elected ones.
You said 60, and I was thinking to myself, like, better be careful if they're going to be like
me
about you. Just I don't want you talking about yourself.
Well, I'm a long way from 60, but no, I've said this and I mean this. People like when they think I'm joking that my generation was dumber than our parents and we're dumber than our kids.
No,
and I mean
remember you saying that.
There are so many aspects of the world where I just ask my kids because I just don't get it.
No, I remember you saying that. Speaking of
kids,
look
at that segue.
There you go.
That's
Britney
why
Spears.
we're almost Emmy nominated right there.
Almost Emmy nominated. Britney Spears confuses some with Instagram pregnancy news. There's a lot of different ways to go here. We can talk about Britney Spears moving on with her life. This was the part that fascinated me, and I don't know if we had talked about this before the show. Britney Spears made this announcement on Instagram. Obviously, it was shocking that she was pregnant. Like her fans found that out. but I believe her fans also found out she was married. I don't think people knew that her relationship, like they were actually husband and wife.
I didn't know that either.
Okay, so now there is a debate going on whether or not they are husband and wife legally, or if they just
Declare
it. So there's this whole debate going on right now about whether or not Britney Spears is actually married. But then it got me thinking, like, I've talked to you a lot of times about like how I think marriage is very old. I think the constructs of marriage.
You find it all is very exciting.
I find it all very
anticipatory.
Not constricting is the wrong word. I find it more of a legal purpose than anything else today, and it drives me insane that people won't admit that.
You're starting to sound like Will Smith, and you didn't say good things about Will Smith.
I don't.
Oh no, Jada. Sorry, Jada.
Yeah, but I'm not. The difference though is I'm not dragging someone along with me through that process.
Whatever.
So this whole idea, like, can you just declare marriage? Like, if Britney Spears.
That's interesting. They're like, nope, we're married. I don't need a judge.
Like, if Britney Spears was just like, we're married, like, it is what it is. I consider him my husband, and he considers me his wife. Like, I don't know. Like, other than the legal ramifications, I don't understand the difference. Like,
well, I was gonna say it's all legal.
Yeah.
It's about inheritance, and if you have a will,
right,
then you're good. It's about health insurance, and I'm sure Britney Spears doesn't need health insurance.
No, probably not.
I don't. I'm with you. I think there's a traditional aspect for the kids to be like, mom and dad and married and family, but no, I don't. It is a fascinating. It would be. I was just having this conversation with someone about if in as we are taught, as we are raised. Well, I say this, and this is talk about going off on a tangent. That I've explained to my kids. One of the things that you think when you see married adult, or you see two types of adults: those who are happily married and those who are divorced. And the ones, and I said, there's a large group in between that are married and aren't all that happy. Whether they're between miserable and or it's not great, but it's not awful, but it's whatever. And we're never taught that as kids. We're just, all this stuff is hidden from us. Like if the relationship's bad, we just hide it to protect the kids.
Sure.
And then the kids get to the point where they don't have a realistic view of what marriage is like, what relationships are like. And then, and I think we do a horrible job as a society of bracing kids for what, that marriage is supposed to be this wonderful time. You're supposed to then you go out and have kids because you're supposed to have kids, and there's not even this option of not having kids because you grew up in a family with kids, so you're supposed to grow up and have kids, and then it's supposed to be great, and everything's supposed to be great, and there's lots of aspects of it that you're not braced for, you're not prepared for, and then you kind of find out as you go along. And I think there's so much information about relationships because there have been relationships throughout all the years, and we just try to hide all the negative aspects or all the warts of relationships to our kids. Sure. And like they don't need to see that. And then they get into their own and they're like, where the hell did this come from? Why didn't anyone warn me?
Well, the interesting thing about like Britney Spears, to build it off of what you're saying, there is an aspect of her life that was hidden. Right? Like she was tucked away and we kind of didn't get to see a lot of her. And now she's back. And I do wonder if there are fans that are realizing like, this is like, they're now seeing Britney for the first time. And maybe she's not the same Britney. Maybe there's things about Britney they assumed, but they didn't know. Because for a hardcore Britney fan to not know that she's married there's not many celebrities that you could say that about. That you didn't know. Like if you were a diehard ex, like it's hard to say that like you didn't know they were already married.
Yes, because because it's legal. Even if you went to Vegas or you went to the justice of the peace, there's a document and somebody somewhere is going to see it and they're going to tell someone.
Yeah.
Unless there's a way that you're at the chapel of Elvis in Vegas and you pay someone this much in hush money and they're like, you're the only two people that know.
Right.
And if word comes out it's because of you two, and you will be sued. Maybe that's the only way you can get away with it. But like you in any courthouse, in any county courthouse, there's a clerk there that's working.
So I think it's either what you just said. I think it was private. They paid somebody NDA, non-disclosure,
yeah.
That signed the NDA. They essentially do the nuptials and all that stuff. And then the only other option is she's completely making this up.
And kind of if she is, good for her.
And I don't want to, and here's my thing. I feel bad being the person to say it because nobody wants to put down Britney Spears right now. Not after what she went through and everything else.
Oh, so you're implying that she's saying it because she's crazy.
I'm just simply saying that I'm rooting for her. I'm rooting for a good pregnancy. I'm rooting for a great relationship. Like, I am in Britney Spears' corner, but I'm not afraid to be like the sane uncle that's like, am I the only one who's going to say like this might not be real? Like this.
See, I didn't look at it from the crazy aspect. I looked at it from the defiant aspect. Because if there's anyone in the world who thinks that the legal system has screwed her over and really taken much of her freedoms away for no reason, it's Britney.
That's a good point. So you're saying her lack of trust in the system. Why wouldn't you?
I'm not going to the system. He's my husband. I'm his wife. I don't need anyone else to tell me that. I would think that she's just kind of giving a middle finger to the system and saying, we're married and I don't need your permission.
I think it's a valid point. It's very possible. Now, here's what I'm going to say to you. I don't know mentally where Britney Spears is at. I don't think she should have been in a conservatorship. I think she should be allowed to live her life and make her own decisions. However, what she has gone through and knowing the mental health aspects that were before she even went into a conservatorship, I think it's also what were the two words I used for your explanation? A valid and possible?
I don't know.
I think it's very valid and possible that some of this is more, I don't want to use the word made up, because clearly she's in a relationship and clearly she's pregnant, right? But to just come out and be like, that's my husband, some of it may be a little like fantastical. Like some of it may be more her just waking up one morning and deciding I'm married, and it may not be the fact that she doesn't trust the legal system.
But isn't it like,
I get why she won it. I think your side's completely valid and possible. Like I'm not even saying I wouldn't come over to your side. I'm just saying I think it's very fair to say what I'm saying as well.
No, I get that. But there's also to the point of like, isn't it so let's take the word marriage out and let's put love in. Like you just wake up one morning and decide you're in love.
Yes.
Why can't you just wake up one morning?
Which is kind of
and marriage is basically saying, I'm going to love you forever.
Right.
So why can't you just wake up one day and say, okay, it's more than just love. Mm-hmm. Now we're married. Why can't you just say that? Why?
Listen, I'm with like from the beginning of this conversation. I'm on the same page. I think people, this is what I'm saying.
I'm impressed if that's what it is.
It would be amazing if that's what it was. Okay. I think you and I, a lot of times we get on and we talk about how the media will say this and the media tries to portray that and they want clicks and they want to say the right things and all this. And all I'm saying is, I think people right now are afraid to say that they're not entirely sure what this is. It's like Britney Spears comes out. Britney Spears comes out and she's just like, I'm pregnant and this is my husband. And everybody just goes, Britney Spears was married. And all I'm saying is like, I think the media feels, there's very few people that I think the media would feel bad enough for.
Right.
Or knows.
They're going to handle this one with kid gloves.
Or knows that like you do not want to step into the wrong mountain.
No, I'm with you.
And so I do think, I'm just saying, I feel like I'm willing to maybe say something that the mass media would not be willing to say.
I don't think that's what it is. I think she is thumbing her nose at not the institution of marriage, at the legal system and saying we're married.
I'm rooting for that.
I think so. Okay. I think it's great.
I'm rooting for that.
Really. By the way, she's 40. Is that how old she is? Did we see an age?
I don't know. I can look it up for you real quick. Why is this going to prove a point?
No, I'm just the details, like the real details, because that apparently that's hard to fake, whether she's pregnant.
40. She was born in 1981.
And she has 2 kids right now with that Fenderline guy, right, Kevin?
I believe she had 2 kids. I don't think they were the Alexander guy. I think they were the Federlins.
I thought so. But those kids are not young. They got to be like 10, 12, 14 now, don't they? Weren't they? Wasn't that a long time ago?
Yeah, a while ago.
So who's the husband? Do we know anything about this?
The husband is Sam Asghari.
Okay. What do we know about Sam?
He's 28 years old.
He's 28.
Yeah, that's what? Why can't he be 28?
Well, obviously he can be, but this is what I was thinking. When you told me she's 40, I was thinking the guy was going to be 50 something.
Oh, no. Why? Why would you think that?
Because he's like there to protect her, because he's probably some well-to-do something that has contacts with her. Like, what does this guy do? How's he 20? What's he do? How does he meet her? He's 28.
Slow down. It's so funny how okay, so you thought she would go older.
Yes.
For protection, like security.
Yes.
I would have said she's going younger without a doubt, because a younger person is going to be much more willing to look over what has happened. Like to me, a 52-year-old sees baggage. A 28-year-old sees Britney Spears sees like opportunity. I don't. So it's so odd how we view that different. And here's the funny part, kind of like, is I don't think you're like, I get why you thought that. Like, I totally get why.
I thought, and I see what you're saying. And again, and I don't even know if you thought of this, but you led me down this path, that the old person who was supposed to protect her for all these years is the one who she had to fight for her emancipation from her father.
Yeah.
I just thought that her next husband would be some big time attorney or something who's like, listen, I'm here and no one can ever hurt you again. Because what do we know about this 28-year-old? Do we know?
He's Iranian. He went to Pierce College. This is so creepy. I can't believe I'm like looking up a guy like this. That's all I really know. I don't know what he does. He has made jokes about, according to these different reports, though, he is very willing to joke about his age, like make jokes that like he's 12 years younger than me.
And maybe through all the stuffiness and the suits and the lawsuits and the courtrooms.
So according to this, he is an actor.
Okay.
He was in a movie in 2019 called "Can You Keep a Secret?" Hold on, real quick. Let's see what else.
He can keep a secret that they were married.
Yeah. Apparently, no one knew that they were married. Can You Keep a Secret? Unbelievable in 2016. Black Monday from 2019 to 2021. Not a bad looking guy, in case you were wondering.
That was my next question.
Was it? I figured. He's been in episodes of NCIS. He was in Hacks. So he's I'm trying to think of the word. Like, I guess he's not like a top tier actor, but
he's working.
But according to his IMDb, like, he is a working actor. Like, his IMDb is not small. Like,
that is fun. From the cycle, that is funny. That I thought she would go protect her. You thought she would go younger. And now, so the other aspect is she trying to reclaim her youth, that a lot of it was taken away from her? Well, so she's dating a 28-year-old actor.
That's a great point of, does she view herself as being, like, when she went into her, I wonder how old she was when she went into her conservatorship.
Right.
And was she in her like mid-20s, late 20s? And now coming out of it, does she relate way more to somebody that is in their mid or late 20s than someone her own age? That would make total sense to me personally.
Yeah, that's neat.
Totally.
She is the most root-forable uber celebrity because of what she's been through. Like, usually society doesn't rally behind uber rich people who are dealing with stuff because they're just like, well, to
me, she is the story to be told about her. And I've talked with friends about this. The story to be told about her, she is a perfect example of why you build your own family. Like, do not rely on blood to tell you who your family is. And that doesn't mean that blood related people shouldn't be in your family.
Correct.
Like, if they're good people and they, like, you can count everything else. But she is a perfect example of like her father and different people in her family, they didn't speak up for her enough.
Right.
They didn't look out for her enough. Like there are people surrounding her that failed her significantly. And that is why, like I've told my younger cousins, I have told players that have graduated, I have told a lot of them, like, go build your own family. And some of that will include your family, but like go find your people, go find your tribe, because don't bank on the idea that blood is going to tell you
that all your blood has your best interest in mind.
Yes.
No, that is very well said.
Yeah. That's the walking story. That's the Britney Spears story to me that probably won't be told enough.
No, I agree. I'm with you.
Really neat story for the Philadelphia Phillies last night. Alec, I should have looked up how to say this guy's name before. Alec Bohm, I'm going to call him Bohm, Bohm. He made a couple of errors last night. So in 3 straight innings, he made 3 throwing errors consecutively from third to first base. They weren't really.
Is that a record? Do we know?
I don't know if it's.
It might be.
They weren't necessarily like egregious throws, but they were just far enough to take the guy off the bag and like just some rough stuff. 3 straight. So finally, an inning or 2 later.
I don't mean to interrupt you. You know, Tommy John made 3 errors on 1 play once.
No.
I
know there's a surgery named after him.
Yes, him.
Was that before or after the surgery? Because if it was after the surgery, I don't think I would have gotten it.
It was after. It was after the surgery.
Okay.
He misplayed a bunt.
Yep.
So the guy beat it, and the guy was good, but he threw it late to first anyway. It threw it over the first baseman's head.
Yeah.
So the ball goes down in the right field corner. So he got 2 errors.
Yep.
1 to let the guy get to first, then 1 on the bad throw.
Yeah.
And
it's rough.
And then he went to back up home, and because there were base runners coming around, because that's why there's a bunt, and the throw coming home got past the catcher.
Okay.
And he picked it up, and by this time the batter who had bunted was heading to third, and he fired it to third and threw it into left field.
Wow.
So he got 3 errors on 1 play. That's tough to do. Anyway, as you were continuing, go ahead. Alec Bohm, 3 errors in 3 innings.
3 errors in 3 innings. An inning or 2 later, he eventually made the right play, scooped it, threw it over to first. They got the out, and the Philly fans erupted, sarcastically, obviously, but they gave him a standing ovation for the good play. And on his way back to his spot near third base, he mouthed to one of his teammates, "I effing hate this place." And it was very clear on camera. It just happened to be, he was zoomed right in on him as he was walking back. And after the game, a reporter asked him about this, and he fully admitted to it. He said, "That's absolutely what I said." He goes, "I had a rough night. I let my emotions get the best of me." He goes, "Philly fans are just like me. They just want to win." And he didn't necessarily like apologize for it, but he owned it. He owned it, fully admitted to it. And Philadelphia social media loved him for owning it and admitting it to it. I believe they said his jerseys at one point were #1 last night in the city of Philadelphia. Like his jersey sales took off. Like, so socially, like, I think there's so many different levels to this. The one that just stands out to me is people will, if you are just real, he didn't even apologize.
Right.
Like you didn't even have to apologize to it. If you are just real and you just are sometimes willing to share your emotions in a organized manner. He didn't rip his shirt off. He didn't throw his glove on the ground. He didn't lie to the reporter afterwards. He said, "I hate this place. Like, I hate this place right now in this moment. I hate this place." And I think there's something unbelievably relatable to that. And I think Philly fans, as hard as they can be, I think that's really all they've ever wanted is just relatable people that just get it. And he very clearly showed last night that he gets it.
No, I agree. It just the ability to be genuine is we there. First of all, there's so much political stuff that people just say stuff, and now people talk about we don't know what to believe. Are they saying it just because they believe it because they think it'll get votes? And you know, I remember when Mike was playing in Baltimore and they're interviewing guys and I kept saying to other reporters when they'd say, "Well, this is what the guy said," I was like, "What's he supposed to say?" And we deal with this so much that we crucify these guys for being honest. And I remember like the one year when I was with when Mike was with the Orioles, Brady Anderson was the leadoff hitter and he hit 50 home runs that year. And everyone's like, "Why do we have our leadoff hitter hitting? If he's hitting 50 home runs, he should hit third or he should hit fourth." but he had like one super year for whatever reason. And he was like, I'm a leadoff hitter. I like batting lead. I've always batted leadoff. I want to bat leadoff, blah, blah, blah. So, but as a reporter, because there's 7,000 reporters and they have to ask questions because that's their job. And so when you ask a guy, like, would you really rather bat leadoff than bat third? Or if the coach asks you, it's selfish if you say, yes, I'm the leadoff hitter and I want to be the leadoff hitter. So you can't say that.
Right.
But then if you say, I just bat wherever the coach wants me to bat, now you're being genuine because you would, but it's a little disingenuous because you can't give your honest answer.
Right.
So we punish these people for not being honest. We don't punish. We complain that the people aren't honest, but then we punish them when they are honest, when their honest answer is a very fair answer.
Right.
And for this guy to be like, yeah, sometimes I hate this place. Sometimes I effing hate this place.
Right.
And it's such a breath of fresh air.
But this was the part that makes it, this is just my opinion. I don't know this for a fact. What makes this great is I would imagine anybody who has ever lived in Philadelphia, like really lived in Philadelphia, they have had a commute, they have had a morning, they have had a day at work, they have had a cruddy meal, they've had a puddle splashed on them, someone bumped into them walking down the street, where they have muttered under their breath, I effing hate this place.
Uh-huh.
And so there was nothing in that moment. Once he admitted to it, there was nothing more relatable than that, because that separates gender, party, all like that is a Philadelphia.
That is a melting pot.
It is a Philadelphian aspect that at some point they have probably said when there's a foot of snow on the ground and they can't get where they're trying to go, and they're like that. Everybody in Philadelphia has muttered, I effing hate this place.
No, I think if you ask the diehard Philadelphia fans that, like, if you were a player, would you hate you sometimes? And they're like, I absolutely would.
Yeah, I think some of them probably would say that.
The other thing, too, is to take it a step further, we talk about psychology. As a fan, these rabid fans that want their team to win, they just want to win. They just want to win. And as the guy said, I know the fans just want to win. I want to win, too. Yeah. Like, do you think booing your third baseman is going to make him play better? And
it's a fair point.
It's a vent. It is a frustration. But there's lots of things as fans, as parents, as teammates, as coaches that we say to somebody because we're frustrated, and they have in a way let us down, like this third baseman has let these fans down. But when we step back and say, did what you said, did that make that person a better player? Did that help you get the result that you want? Or did you just make it worse?
Right.
And so many times I don't know if we made it worse, but we certainly didn't make it better. Right. And yeah, booing your third baseman after it certainly doesn't make it better. Right. And while he's standing out on the field and he's thinking, I effing hate this place, you probably haven't picked up his game at all. Probably not.
Probably not. There was the other side note to this, and I don't have the stats in front of me. I believe I'm 99% sure he was 3 for 3 at the plate. And so there's an aspect, I think, for a lot of Philly people is like, can you handle the heat or can't you? And so you have 3 straight errors and 3 straight innings early on. Then you end up going 3 for 3 from the plate. You make a play, you get a standing ovation. You admit, to me, Philly adopted him last night.
He's become a cult hero.
He is Philly through and through. I mean, he could be from Venice Beach, and he is now cheesesteaks for life.
I was gonna say he's born on cheesesteak. And the beauty is now that they have the universal DH, he doesn't have to play third base anymore. They can just DH him.
DH him the whole time. So that's just a.
Now I got to go find it. Were they hard throws? Were they routine?
The first one, see, this is you talk about psychology in sports and in life. The first throw was this weird dribbler. He tried to scoop it. It would have been a rough throw to make. It goes over top.
So it's far from routine.
And so it is funny how, if that one doesn't have, let's say that's the third play instead of the first one, I don't even know if the next 2 happen.
Right. No, I'm with you.
Just that first one, he tried to make something happen out of nothing. It didn't go well. So then the next one comes to him, and it just, that's what's in your head. And then that one. So then you get the third one, and so I do think a lot of it's kind of like watching the first one go down, and it's.
Well, we've talked about that. The first shot, does it rattle in or does it rattle out?
Sure.
and how much it makes you feel better. I know my son with his second JV baseball game last night, and he was 0-for-1 in the first game with a walk, and on his first at bat last night, he hit a liner up the middle that was like between pitcher and second baseman, and the second baseman goes over and dives, and there's that like split second, like, is he going to catch this or not? And he missed it, and he didn't miss it, he didn't get to it, and the ball rolls into center field, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, his second JV game, and he got a hit. Yeah. And it wasn't a cheap hit, it was like a real hit, it was a line drive up the middle. So now, if he doesn't get a hit the next game, he doesn't get a hit. If he ends up like, if he's 1 for 6, right now he's 1 for 3 on the year. If he's 1 for 6, if he's 1 for 8, if he's 1 for 9, like 1 for 8 is way better than 0 for 8.
Sure.
And it's like the difference between like 1 for 8 and 2 for 8 isn't that big of a deal. The difference between 1 for 8 and 0 for 8 is huge.
Sure.
And just that psychology to get it. So you're right. There is so much of a, did I get that one break and now I can just ride off of it.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time in sports.
All the time. Anything else? Anything that you had left over?
No, I think I told you this. I think yesterday was the something anniversary of the launch of Apollo 13. Which,
oh yeah, you did mention that.
I think it was yesterday, and I think it was the launch and not the return. But I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw something posted about it, and that's one of the movies that I think I didn't know the story till I saw the movie because I was too young, and there aren't that many things left that I'm too young for. Okay. But that was one of them. Yeah. I think that's one of the movies that nobody dislikes that movie. That is universally beloved.
There's the problem solving aspect to it of I always said The Martian kind of ripped it off because it's just like you solve this problem and then you solve the next problem and you just get a little closer to home. There is the movie making aspect of that, of we solve this problem to get to this problem. We solve this problem to get to this problem. And whether it's against a clock or against a distance or you're trying to get to something, that formula for a movie like that what's the word I'm looking for? Like plot driving, like just getting you to the next that formula will always work.
When they come in to the conference table and they dump the bag of stuff and like, this is what we have, figure out how to get them home is the best scene.
It's so funny. So when I was younger, I used to be told about an uncle that worked for IBM, and essentially he was like an Imagineer. And so they would walk in the room and they'd say like, what'd you come up with today? And like, it was just a group of people that would just sit there and like draw stuff up on the whiteboard and like, what'd you think of last night? And just, I thought, what if we could da-da-da-da. And I remember like when I was like 10, 11, 12, I went from like my zookeeper phase, like when I was a kid, to I wanted to be like an Imagineer, like the people in that video in NASA. Like that, just, it is your job to like, here's what we have to work with, go. And that I can remember like 10 to 13, that was very much like a thing for me. Like I was like, how do I get to be one of those people?
And I love the scene too where what's his name? Gary Sinise is playing Mattingly, who supposedly had chickenpox and never had chickenpox. And he's like, we need 2 or 3 amps. And in the world, and I'm not a science guy, but 2 or 3 amps is, and he's like, well, which is it? Is it 2 or is it 3?
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, like that's how tight it is.
Yeah.
And it's maybe I'll go watch that again tonight.
Really great.
It's but it was unbelievable movie.
All right. NBA playoffs start tonight. We don't have to talk about
it. Do they?
The play-in starts tonight. Yes.
Are all of them? Or just 2 of them? Tonight?
2 of the games are tonight, and then there will be 2 more tomorrow.
So they have an East-West.
Yes.
So 7 o'clock start, 10 o'clock start, roughly.
Yes. Yep. I think you nailed it. I think it's 7.
When's LeBron go?
I'll have to look it up for you. I'm not sure what time his game's at.
I'm sad. I love LeBron. I'm in that very rare camp that maybe it's not that rare, that Jordan is the greatest player ever without doubt. But I still love LeBron. And I find, especially people my age, have trouble with that.
Sure.
Because they feel like LeBron is threatening. They felt that way with Kobe for a while. Kobe was not beloved when he was younger.
No, but Kobe's different because Kobe, you at least, if you wanted to read the news and you wanted to, like, there were parts of his history where if you wanted to just be like, he wasn't a good guy, like, it was a fair argument to make at a certain point in time.
Okay.
About Kobe Bryant.
Right.
Like, you could say that, and like, if it wasn't easy to rebut that fact.
Okay.
LeBron, like, listen, he drives me nuts. But the one thing I'll tell you is, like, he's a good person.
Oh, he's
like,
eminently likable.
He drives me. There are things that he does. There are things that he does as an icon that just drive me insane, because I'm just like, dude, like, you're not fooling anyone. Like, you're not fooling me. Like, you're not fooling anybody. But most of those things are very minute in the grand scale of what, are you a good person or are you not? Because at the end of the day, LeBron James is a incredibly good person.
Yeah, and that's why I like him.
There you go.
Well, he's a good player too.
You couldn't, but there was a time where you couldn't. I don't want to say you couldn't say that about Kobe. If someone wanted to not say that about Kobe, they weren't wrong. You would have had a hard time arguing against it.
No, I get it. I think the thing about LeBron too is that he's gotten so much. He has so much clout that he is basically can control. I don't say he controls the Laker franchise, but he
controls the Lakers franchise.
It's close. And there would probably be better. Jordan didn't have that in Chicago.
No, not even close.
And it worked to his advantage.
100%.
And there's a great line about Bono, the lead singer of U2, who said about Prince before Prince passed away, when he'd heard some stuff that he'd done and it was whatever, and it was long. He said, Prince is a musical genius who right now is in dire need of an editor. And Prince got so big and he had so much control that he had too much control, maybe, at least this was Bono's opinion, that he needed help. Sure. And he needed someone from the outside to be like, okay, this is what you've done. Now give it to me and I'll do the rest and we'll make it. And LeBron might need that at this point in his career, because this year certainly didn't. The Lakers, they did win a title with the Lakers.
But that was so.
It was different. It was the COVID. It was a very different time.
It was really weird. He got the 3 months off in between. Davis got the 3 months off in between.
It was a very weird time. I don't disagree with that.
Really,
but
really bizarre.
If there was another hard figure in the Lakers right now that said, we will assemble, we'll discuss the roster, but we're going to assemble the roster.
Right.
Would it work better? And it's going to be interesting to see what they do next year. Because he's not done.
I would have loved to have seen him. There's an alternate universe where LeBron James never left Cleveland. And I do think LeBron James would have won 3 or 4 titles regardless.
But is his life way more boring? I can understand why. If you wanted to be bigger than big, you leave Cleveland for South Beach. Then you go back to Cleveland. I get that. You leave Cleveland for the Lakers.
In 1995, yeah. In 2015, I don't know.
Can you imagine what life would be like in LA for him? Every day.
Who? LeBron?
Yeah, every day.
But what's other than the weather, what would be the difference?
The people.
Yeah, but you'd think he cares. I mean, he's trying to play basketball.
Yeah, but he's making movies. He's doing so many other. The elbows that he rubs on a daily basis in LA is nowhere near.
Yeah. See, we're gonna have to. That would be a great discussion to have at some point too, because I think your value of like an LA or a Nashville or like whatever, I don't value it nearly as much as someone like you. Like, to me, a LeBron or a whoever in 2020 can accomplish anything that somebody in LA or Nashville or Vegas does.
But he can't just go to lunch with someone. He can't just, without a plane and flying across the country. Like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you're going to this premiere. Just think all the premieres and all the parties and all that other stuff.
And that's fair. But the guy has a house in Miami. He's got a house in Akron. Like, I'm sure he's got there's no way he doesn't have 5 or 6 houses. Is that a fair assessment?
I would guess.
So this idea that 260 whatever days out of the year, he's just waking up in LA and roaming the streets and running.
But he's in LA a lot because the Lakers are there.
I understand that, but I'm just saying it's not a fair assessment of I'm sure he's, first of all, during the season he's all over the place.
Correct.
Okay, and then the 4 months out of the season, is he on an island? Is he in Miami? Is he in Vegas? Is he back in doing his charity work in Akron? I just don't think the rubbing elbows aspect of LA is real in his world.
But because he's doing so much more in movies, and that's where he wants to be, even with the golden raspberry that he won or whatever.
Yeah.
Like those people are all there, and they're all just. And I know this guy, and like, you know, we can go to lunch. We'll go to lunch on Thursday. We'll go.
James.
I get it, but if he's in Cleveland, he can't go to lunch with a guy that's in California, and you can create such a more personal relationship if you're there.
So I guess the gap is like, I think out of 365 days, what you're describing is probably true for 30 days. Like for an extra month, what you're just saying is true. And I just don't know if that's like a reason enough to just be like, I have to go to LA. Do you see?
I get what you're saying. I get what he's saying. It's just there's so much more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like when A-Rod went to New York.
Mm-hmm. What's
the difference between A-Rod being in Texas and A-Rod being in New York? A lot. Because there's so much more in New York.
But baseball, the Yankees and baseball, it's just a different system.
You don't think the Lakers and basketball are
not in the last decade or so. Like again, the Lakers are very fortunate that LeBron James just woke up one morning and decided I have to live in LA. Because if LeBron James doesn't feel that way, then like the Lakers are maybe the worst team of the last decade.
Did you see season 2
of?
They got the green light to make a season 2 of the Lakers show.
Oh, of Winning Time? I'm only 4 episodes in.
I saw half of one and I backed out because now when it comes on, I don't know where I'm at.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of wait till I can know that I'm watching them in order. But I saw like half of one and I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far.
So anyway,
we'll get there.
So we can do this again. Who's winning the title? You got an NBA title?
I think it's Phoenix again. I remember telling you last year, I was like, I know it sounds insane, but I think Phoenix could win the whole thing. I think it's Phoenix again.
All right, there you go.
I do. So
you got dark horse?
For dark horse for this year,
because you liked Atlanta last year a lot, and they made a run.
I liked Atlanta last year. I mean, listen, that was last year was very unusual in the sense that like I was looking at both of them. I was like, I'm telling you, like I can't explain it, but I think these two teams could like do it, and one of them almost did. No, I think this year the West is unbelievably top heavy. Like I think it's going to be really hard for a team to beat Phoenix 4 times. I think Phoenix is there. And then the East, it's very similar. Like I don't think there's a dark horse in the East. I think it's going to be one of the top 3 teams. It's going to be a Milwaukee. It's going to be a Miami. It's going to be like a Boston. Like it's not going to be like a Chicago, Toronto.
And there's no magical run coming from Brooklyn.
No. If you said to me, if I had to pick like a lower seed, if you haven't watched the Toronto Raptors, they are so much fun to watch. It is like when kids make up teams, like they make players and the players are like, every player's like 7 foot tall and like their arms. And you're like, this is a video game. This isn't real. That is what it's like watching the Toronto Raptors. Every guy is like 6'8" and their arms hang to the floor and they are flying around and everyone shoots threes and everyone defends and everyone switches. And the Toronto Raptors are really fun to watch. Whether or not that will equal success, I don't know if they're talented enough to win, but like Nick Nurse has managed to get them into the top 6, which is a miracle from where they started.
How about the Sixers?
No.
Okay.
What the one thing that the Sixers have going for them, the playoffs slow down significantly. And Embiid and Harden shoot more free throws than like a third of the league, like a third of the teams that compete in the league. So easy points in the playoffs come from the free throw line. Embiid and Harden are 2 of the best to ever, not just this year, to ever get to the free throw line. So there is a path for them to do it. I hate their bench. I don't think they have enough shooting. And the other thing, like Harden's been there for 2 months. Like when it comes down to like, when it's nut cracking time and it's like, what are we doing? Like if Harden's not,
they're going to give him the ball and say, go get us 2.
If Harden's not hitting step back threes, and here's the other part of it too, like if Harden's not hitting them, it's only going to take a matter of time before Embiid's looking at him like, just give it to me. Like right. We're not doing this. Like, and then how does that work? And so I don't trust Philly.
Okay.
So there you go.
There you go.
That's my quick
Well
rundown.
done. Well done. You're good at that.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news, including the first topic we talked about today. You can find it. It's teen is charged with sending sexual explicit videos and pictures. Again, NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
See you tomorrow.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will